Hello and welcome to episode 11 of my Kerbal Career. Now I've changed things up a little bit and started not at the launchpad, although we will be going there very soon. This is another issue that has happened as of updating to 0.25 in Kerbal Space Program, and that is some resizing problems, such as these heavy drills that are currently 5-meter parts, which is absolutely ludicrous. So we need to rescue Jebediah from this monstrosity. Now if I try to stage, fire the engine, pretty much if I try to do anything with this craft, then Jebediah dies. Now what I've noticed is right here you can see the craft is indeed hidden under all of this stuff, these drills, but if I get the angle just right, okay, there we go. We can see that the cupola module is right here, meaning Jebediah can be freed, and from a little bit of testing, if I send him into EVA, it will kind of sling him out without killing him. So we need to send something out here to rescue him once we, of course, get him outside of this monster. And then we can just destroy this thing or leave it in orbit once we have Jebediah out. He is the only real concern that I have about this vessel, the fact that we don't want to kill one of the Kerbal legends. So without further ado, let's go to the launch pad to launch what we're going to be using to save this guy. So back on the launch pad we have Bill in a 2-person cockpit here, and of course there's only Bill because we need to save a space for Jebediah. So I can close this, get all of my utilities open once they decide to open, and launch. Now we've seen this kind of design before where I have an engine with these side tanks with little engines in them, and it's a pretty basic design. That's still down there, which we'll be getting to eventually, but this command module is from Lackluster Labs, which I decided to add back in. I had it when I was doing my other series that died off in I think 0.23, but I just like the look of some of the parts, plus the square parts do really well for VTOLs as well as rovers. So I decided since I have the space, I might as well add them. And I'm working on building a couple of things that use the parts, but that's mostly for the big Duna mission that I'm going to be doing here once the transfer window comes around, and there's going to be a lot going to Duna all at once. Well, how very convenient. I just ran out of fuel and exactly 71 for the periapsis, so I literally just made it. Okay, so I got my encounter and it's time to accelerate time, because I have that superpower, if you could call it that. It's definitely convenient. I don't know how well I'd do waiting a full day just to get to the moon. I'm actually really glad Kerbal Space Program is not like mobile games, where it'd be real-time everything, because then your trips out to Dres and such are only, you only have to wait, what, 3-4 years for them, even to get the encounter, unless you want to waste a lot of fuel. But then again, the transfer is also pretty bad. Or if you use the planets like I showed in the Kerbal Universe Spotlight, which are way out there, you're only waiting 2 years for your transfer to get back there. That's not a lot of real time, is it? Even if you divide that by 4 because Kerbal time, it's still half a year. So Kerbal Space Program would make an awful mobile game, just realizing that. So moving along with the game, I am just working on my encounter with Jebediah pretty much. Now this is the first part to the main problem of what we're going to be seeing, and that is I am going the wrong way. I have the wrong orbit around the moon, meaning that I didn't notice this when I was further away, so I have to expend a vastly larger portion of fuel getting myself turned around. As you can see, I'm just switching the way I'm orbiting the moon, and this is costing me several hundred delta V that is not something that I can exactly spend, and we'll be getting over that a little bit later as to why I need that extra fuel. Alright, so we have made our encounter, and the vessel I'm looking at is right over there. Things are shaking and breaking, and now because this is a glitch and not my own fault on what is about to happen, I'm doing a quick save to make sure Jebediah lives. And after a suspenseful pause of Jebediah loading into the world, he's completely uncontrollable, basically. And I'm not entirely sure why I'm not able to control him as easily. I'm guessing he just has too much spinning going on to allow me to turn on his RCS pack. But eventually, with the help of time warp, or the cheating of time warp, depending on how you view it, I'm able to get him under control and bring him back to the rescue ship. Now, this is the second problem about the rescue ship, is the fact that in designing it, there were a few errors, and they're quite significant for trying to re-land this thing. And with over 1,000 units of Delta V, I should be able to make it back to Kerbin's orbit. Now, if you're wondering that this thing has no parachutes, apparently I forgot to put them on. I'm not sure what the idea was. Just get Jebediah out of that thing? Well, this won't be able to land. I'll have to pick up something that can land these two guys and Dudgan, who is still stuck on the other thing. So even though things are not working out for this vessel, I do decide to get it back into Kerbin's orbit, which is where I will be doing the rescuing. And there is indeed a third portion of this rescuing the rescue ship idea that is quite the problem. And that would have to be that there is more missing than just parachutes. If you look at the vessel, there is an engine, a fuel tank, a cockpit, some solar panels, and batteries. There's no parachutes, and there's another item that's missing that we will notice later on. So, from a few rash decisions, the only thing capable of saving the two Kerbals I just sent back to Kerbin is Reuben, who will be abandoning his post on the moon. So, moving him right along, I have him diving into Kerbin's atmosphere. That way, well, not him yet, but these two are on their way into Kerbin's atmosphere. And they're just trying to slow down because they have such limited fuel that they can't afford to get into an orbit using it. So I try to aero brake some, use some fuel, not all of it, not yet anyway. I want to save a little bit for trying to get this rendezvous later on. But as you can see, I'm bringing my apoapsis down significantly, so it's a little easier to work with. Now back on the other vessel, which I will be rendezvousing with because this vessel has food. And I have not said this yet, but both Bill and Jebediah have no food and no electric charge on their vessel. Well, they have electric charge, but they don't have food or water, which is extremely difficult for them to survive. And also, not to forget oxygen. They just lack all of the life support needs that they will need because, like I think I said earlier, this vessel was intended to just pick up Jebediah and go straight back. It was not intended for all of this. However, because of the fact that I forgot to put parachutes on it, then I just have to deal with the fact that I couldn't land it, so I have to somehow keep them alive. Now, for the most part, I am working on getting an encounter between the two, and they're in completely different orbits, which make it very, very difficult to do. But as you can see, this is just me playing around with maneuver nodes more, and I'm editing this severely because this was literally 30-40 minutes of just playing with maneuver nodes to try and get an encounter, while TAC life support yelled at me saying oxygen is low, food is low, and basically that your Kerbals are going to die pretty soon. I do manage to get an encounter, and this is where another problem arises. Leading back from the previous problem, it leads into why this is a problem. And that is because I don't have enough fuel to do the full encounter. As you can see right there, the lunar orbit rescues, food, water, and oxygen are completely gone. There is none left in this vessel for Bill and Jebediah to enjoy. So, what I am doing at this point is just trying to, get as close as I can to the other vessel. And I've already used all the other fuel from the other vessel, so I'm using this vessel's fuel now to, as best I can, get the encounter. And after another short stretch of time, I get this close. 1.3-ish kilometers, 1.5 kilometers, roughly. This is the closest I'm going to get, and I'm just going to drift further apart. So, since both vessels are completely out of fuel, no RCS, I just decide to take my Kerbals and fly them over, because at this point I'm panicking. It's been about 40-50 minutes in-game where these guys have had no oxygen, and I'm certain that they should be dead at this point, or that the second Kerbal, since I think I have Jebediah right now, Bill is going to die. Or Bob, I might be getting him mixed up, but I'm pretty sure it was Bill. But as you can see, I'm just flying Jebediah here over to where he can stay alive. And once I do finally get there, I fly right past it, increasing Jebediah's likelihood of dying from starvation. Now I eventually get close enough to grab some of the food and just bring it into Jebediah's inventory. That way he has some in his EVA suit, his half-day rations, and he can survive. Now I just toy around with a little bit, increase the rate at which stuff starts transferring, so he fills up all of his tanks. Now, the cupola module on the vessel in front of me is a one-person command module. So, I can't store all 3 Kerbals in it. And I try to get creative as to how I'm going to deal with this. But first, let's get Bill over here. And I do the exact same thing with Bill as I just mentioned. I pull him out, bring him over here to grab some food, and hope he doesn't die along the way. Now Bill, just like Jebediah, does manage to make it all the way to the food canister. And of course grab onto some rations so he can keep living. Now that I know I have enough food on this vessel, enough life support supplies to keep these guys alive.
However, it's going to be very difficult for me to keep them close to this vessel without them drifting too far away and be unable to keep getting supplies every half day, or to basically get rescued, since Kerbal construction time won't let me build anything in any less than 7 or 8 days to actually save these guys and let them jump in someone's ship. So for that, what I'm trying to do right now is attach myself. I'm wondering, like, I know that Kerbal's EVA is considered its own ship, so I'm wondering if I could literally dock myself with these fuel lines. And as I painfully learn, after getting Jebediah to make the actual link, since a Kerbal could not link itself, I learned that it doesn't work. Now, currently it might look like it's working, but secretly KSP is doing weird things. Things that make us all fear it in general. Things that make the developers question why they have this game. Now, one bit of it is Bill is now this ship. Bill is the ship. The cupola module does not contain any Kerbals, and this entire thing is Bill himself. This is what I'm trying to figure is what's happened, is that the whole thing has turned into Bill Kerman. And Bill Kerman, as it were, does not like Jebediah trying to tap in to connecting to him. Because this happens. The vessel just starts to violently move around with phantom forces and fling the two Kerbals away. Now, as you could see there, Bill, when it freezes at that frame and then lets go, Bill actually broke the pipeline, which is the only reason that this thing was saved, was because the Bill and the ship detached from being the same entity in the game, and it freed the ship from being Bill, if that makes sense. It's a confusing thing to try and explain, but basically Bill was the ship when Kerbal Attachment System decided that it was time to break the pipeline because there was too much force against it. Then that freed Bill, even though the pipe is still a bit glitchy looking, and I don't dare touch it in fear of other things happening. So I just leave it the way it is for now.
Okay, so I'm back out here with the two floating Kerbals, and I've actually been swapping them in and out of the cupola module so that, well, they can replenish their EVA propellant. That way they don't run out. And of course I can take resources from the hex cans because of the nice little transfer window that I get. However, it's becoming irritating because I have a craft built to rescue these guys. And literally every half day, less than every half day, I'm going to have to grab more resources, move these guys closer because they drift away slowly, and such. So instead of doing that, 6.5, or about 13, 14 times, depending on the launch and everything, I've decided to make this much easier. And change something temporarily about the cupola module. At least until these people can be rescued, these Kerbals. And that is, it can store 3 Kerbals. Ultimately, I decided to do this because it doesn't affect the overall outcome of what's going to happen. Because even if every half hour in the game, or half day, in Kerbal Space Program I fed these guys and moved them around, I would still eventually get a vessel up here and them having enough food. But I decided that this would just be easier and I'd actually be able to time warp. So let's go on the launch pad and look at what I constructed to save these guys. So Bob is here on the launch pad and he's going to be the one rescuing our other Kerbals. Now I decided to attach this crew hatch from Lackluster Labs that's supposed to have a crew capacity of 3. So I guess we'll be testing that just to make sure. Now this is very simple. Command module, parachutes, fuel tanks, small engine, big procedural fuel tank, and big engine. So, throttle up and let us get up into space, hopefully with this bottom stage, maneuver around with the second stage, and then rescue the other Kerbals and bring them back, doing any contracts that I should probably check to see if we have any. There we go, in a stable orbit with still about just under a kilometer of delta V that I can start using to match my orbit with this thing. That's not the right one. It's Bill Kerman lander. Oh, that's funny. Since I used the fuel hatches, the pipeline nodes from Kerbal Attachment System, and I attached it to Bill Kerman, it decided to change the name of the vessel. Anyway, that is going to be my target. And with a lot of maneuver node editing and burning and such, I finally do manage to get the two close enough to start moving Kerbals. Now, it was, of course, difficult to do the encounter, and I'm not going to show it because of the eccentricity of the orbit, so it was just me playing with maneuver nodes, making a ton of small burns to try and get these two things aligned, and eventually managing to do so. So I'm just moving all the Kerbals into the final rescue ship, whereas there have been 3 this episode. Now, originally I did say that I was going to do some transferring of resources, but there's nothing to really transfer. Since this doesn't have parachutes, it can't get back, and it doesn't have infinite amounts of fuel. Now, ideally, I'd be able to rescue the original Minmus vessel as well, but I don't think I have enough Delta V to get myself an encounter with that, as well as be able to land. So I think I'm just going to drop this thing back into Kerbal and take care of that later. Maybe launch some kind of tug that can just start tearing these things down, because I've got 3 or 4 abandoned craft orbiting Kerbin at this moment in time. So it's time to go home, and I decide to burn semi toward the planet just because of my positioning. It would be more efficient than just burning directly against my prograde vector, so I'd be burning retrograde, and I just get it into the atmosphere, and it's a typical descent. So with the success of this landing, I can officially say that I have rescued the rescue ship's rescue ship, because we originally started with rescuing Jebediah, and then that ship needed rescuing by the ship that we had landed on the moon, and then we even needed to rescue that ship with this ship, so that of course we could get all of the Kerbals back down to the surface of Kerbin. With time running out, I am back at the Kerbal Space Center. Now I've spent some of my science on some new technology, and unfortunately I can't show it because for whatever reason, and I'm guessing it has to do with the tree loader, it's extremely laggy, and about half the time crashes my game when I try to research a new tech node. So that's probably an issue between tree loader, interstellar, and Kerbal construction time, since they all are really affecting it. Or it could just be Kerbal construction time because it is still newly updated in 2.25. Anyhow, this has been episode 11 of my Kerbal Career. I thank you all for watching. This is PTT GRW, signing out.